Yeah, Dr. Rajni, yeah. So it's an honor to introduce Dr. Rajni Khajuria. She's a PhD and CAGC, and Madam is a senior consultant geneticist working independently and doing genetic consultations for patients all over the world. She's a certified associate genetic counselor from Board of Genetic Counseling India, BGCI. Her past affiliations are very prestigious affiliations. She is the director of clinical genomics and scientific affairs at Progenesis Limited from 2022 to 24. She was the principal consultant clinical genomics Clever Gene Group in 2022, 21 to 22. She was the lab director and senior genetic counselor at iGenomics India for good 8 years, 2013 to 2020. And she was a genomics research fellow and scientist at All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi in the year. And she spent good 10 years at AIMS, and which just speaks so highly of her. She also did MSc in human genetics, and ma'am did PhD and postdoc clinical genetics from AIMS New Delhi. She has got 21 years plus years of experience in operations and R&D focused on clinical genetics, reproductive genetics, genetic counseling, and consultancy, specializing in preconception, prenatal, pre-implantation, and reproductive genetics. Her special interests lie in reproductive and clinical genetics, genetic counseling, medical genetics, and also rare gene disorders and genetic health awareness. She is also a specialist in ensuring genetic lab compliances and quality, patient support and advocacy. Her publications are in almost all the better and the best peer-reviewed journals, and she has written book chapters for uh, prestigious books in national and international books. And Madam has also is a very commonly invited presenter at most of the meetings held in Southeast Asia. She has been the founder and honorary member, genetic consultant for Indian Rett Syndrome Foundation, that is a rare disease patient organization. She is also a member of many national and international societies such as ISGC, SIMG, PGCI, APMS, IFS, ISAR, and so on and so forth. So over to you, Dr. Rajni. We are all very excited to hear you today.
Thank you, Dr. Sarpreet, for the warm welcome and introduction. It's my honor to be here and talking in Fertilist Academy, and thank you for giving this opportunity to us on this platform. So today I'm going to speak on a topic which is really interesting and very, I will say, a very important topic for obs-gynae specialists and even embryologists and other people who are starting their journey in genetics, so they can learn basic about what are the right time, what conversation they should do when it deals with reproductive genetics. So good evening, everyone. So as I said, I will be speaking about right conversation at the right time, genetics and right reproductive decision making. Through this presentation today, I will explore how genetics is transforming reproductive healthcare, not just through advanced testing technologies, but through the right conversation at the right time that support informed in reproductive decisions. This session is not only about which genetic tests are available, but more importantly, when and how we communicate genetic information to the patients and families across the reproductive journey. Before starting my presentation, I would like to disclose that I have no financial disclosure or conflict of interest with the presented material. So why this topic? Why I have chosen this topic? So as we know that in reproductive medicine, timing is very critical. A conversation that occurs before conception offers very different options compared to the conversation that happen after a positive prenatal diagnosis. Today, we are practicing in an era where genomic technologies have expanded rapidly. We have carrier screening, PGT, NIPT, prenatal sequencing, and even whole exome sequencing. These technologies are becoming increasingly integrated into care pathways. However, technology alone does not improve outcome. What truly influences patient care is whether the right information is delivered at the right time in a way patient can understand and use. So over next few slides, I'm going to move you through reproductive journey from preconception to prenatal diagnosis and discuss where genetic conversation become most impactful. So we will also look at communication challenges, ethical issues, and practical approaches clinician can use in everyday reproductive practice. So in this presentation, the objective of session are to identify, understand, differentiate, recognize, and apply the information you learn through this presentation. So coming to the evolution of reproductive genetics. So historically, genetics in reproductive medicine was mainly reactive. Many genetic conditions were identified only after the birth of an affected child or following a recurrent pregnancy losses. But today, reproductive genetics has changed significantly. We now have advanced tools such as expanded carrier screening, PGT, NIPT, prenatal exome sequencing, and even precision reproductive medicine. And this new technology shift allow us to move from reacting to genetic condition towards preventing and planning for them earlier in reproductive journey. However, with these advances also comes new challenges. So both clinician and patients must navigate large amount of complex genetic information, often during emotionally difficult situations. Genetics is no longer confined to prenatal diagnosis alone. It influences almost every stage of reproductive care. The reproductive journey offers multiple opportunity for meaningful genetic discussions. From preconception carrier screening to infertility evaluation, embryos testing, prenatal screening, and neonatal care. The key message here is that genetics should be viewed as a journey, not as a single event triggered by an abnormal report. Why the timing is very important while giving the right conversation. So when genetic counseling occurs too late, patient may feel overwhelmed and cornered into urgent decision during pregnancy and IVF cycles. In contrast, if we do earlier conversations, it will allow patients more autonomy, more time to process information, greater reproductive flexibility, and this is why proactive communication is often more valuable than the technology itself. So we can say that late conversation often become the crisis conversations. So the ideal time for many reproductive genetics conversation is actually before conception occurs. Preconception counseling creates opportunities to assess family history, discuss consanguinity where the couple is married in relation, carrier screening, discuss carrier screening, evaluate inherited conditions, and consider reproductive planning strategies. This stage, specifically at preconception, allows the maximum range of options for the couple, including natural conception with informed risk, IVF with PGT, donor gametes, or prenatal diagnostic planning. So what exactly is carrier screening? We will not go into much detail because we have session in our course, so which will let you know more detail about the test purpose and its limitation. We will just briefly cover here. So carrier screening is testing healthy individual to see if they have increased chance of having a child with genetic disease. So carrier screening has transformed preventive reproductive genetics by making so it's a kind of comprehensive genetic assessment where we can screen hundreds of inherited condition in one single test. So you can understand the strength of the test. However, as it's an advanced test, it also creates challenges. Patients may struggle to understand residual risk, uncertain finding, or implication for future pregnancies, which are really important topic to discuss with the patients. So this reinforces the importance of genetic counseling, not simply ordering the test. So carrier screening allows us to assess multiple conditions in one simple single blood sample, making it a comprehensive test than a targeted test. When we offer a target, so there is a targeted carrier screening where we only target on few genes or few disorders. So, but it doesn't provide you a comprehensive screening. The biggest strength of carrier screening is identifying at-risk couple early, enabling informed reproductive decisions such as PGTM or prenatal testing, ideally in preconception stage. However, as is technology, as an advanced technology, it also brings challenges like identification of variants of uncertain significance, residual risk, and inclusion of rare condition with variable expressivity. which can complicate the interpretation. So it can also increase anxiety and decisional burden for the patient, making counseling very important. So while carrier screening is a powerful tool, its true value lies in careful patient selection, clear communication of risks and limitations, and robust pre and post test genetic counseling. So let's consider a simple and very common case or scenario that a healthy young couple comes for preconception counseling and casually mentions that the husband's brother has a thalassemia. Now they are planning for their first pregnancy and they have never undergone any genetic testing. Now this is where the right conversation at the right time become very important. Before pregnancy begins, we have an opportunity to discuss with the couple about carrier screening, inheritance pattern, reproductive risk, and available reproductive option. After taking the test, in case both the partners are found to be carrier of thalassemia, there is a 25% risk of chance of having an affected child in every pregnancy. So identifying this risk before conception allows couple to make informed and less stressful decisions. So the key message here is that sometimes a single family history question can completely change the reproductive planning and outcome. Genetics plays a significant role in infertility in both men and women. Chromosomal abnormalities such as translocations and specific genetic conditions can directly affect reproductive function. In males, chromosomal abnormalities, bichromosomal microdeletions, and CFTR-related variants are important consideration. Whereas in female, fragile X mutation and genes associated with ovarian insufficiency may influence both fertility and future reproductive planning. Importantly, assisted reproductive technology can sometimes pass on genetic conditions that may earlier have affected fertility, making genetic counseling very, very important. Genetics has become deeply integrated into IVF and ART practice too. Pre-implantation genetic testing now allows selection against monogenic disorders, structural rearrangement, and chromosomal abnormalities. However, these technologies also raise important questions. How do we counsel about mosaic embryos? How much information should influence embryo selection? What are the psychological implications of embryo ranking? And these are not purely technical decisions. They are deeply ethical and emotional conversation and has to be taken care of in a right way at the right time. So PGT, pre-implantation genetic testing, we have three main category: PGT-A, which detects aneuploidy, PGT-SR for structural rearrangement, and PGT-M for monogenic disorder. PGT is a powerful tool, but its value lies in appropriate selection, correct timing, and informed counseling. These slides compare PGT-A, SR, M from counseling perspective. So as you can see that in the slide that PGT-A focuses on embryo selection, helps to identify euploid embryo. But we must counsel the patients that not all embryo will be normal and results like mosaicism can be challenging to interpret. PGT-SR is used to avoid chromosomal imbalances in couple with structural rearrangement. A key counseling point here in PGT-SR is the possibility of finding no transferable embryos, along with emotional and financial implications, and no differentiation between normal and balanced embryos. PGTM is aimed at preventing specific genetic disorder, but it requires a known mutation in the family and may also result in having no unaffected embryos after the testing. Across all these three technologies, an important message is that there is no 100, they are not 100% accurate and they do not guarantee a 100% healthy baby. Prenatal confirmatory testing with CVS or amniocentesis is still recommended. So the takeaway here is select, avoid, or prevent, but counsel for limitation and confirmatory testing very carefully. So another case, just to give a brief idea how it happens. So consider a couple undergoing their fourth IVF cycle after multiple implantation failure. Until now, the focus of the couple has been completely on embryo quality and treatment protocol. But they have never been counseled about genetic testing or no genetic evaluation has been discussed with the couple till date. At this stage, the right conversation would include parental karyotyping and the possible role of PGT here. In some cases, an underlying balanced chromosomal rearrangement may be contributing to the repetitive IVF failures. Introducing genetics earlier in IVF journey can help reduce emotional, physical, and financial burden while also supporting more informed reproductive decisions. One of the most important conversation in reproductive genetics is clarifying the difference between screening and prenatal screening and diagnostic testing. Many patients incorrectly assume that a highly sensitive screening test is a definitive test, means it confirms the finding given by the test. But this is a misunderstanding, and this misunderstanding can create major anxiety or false reassurance. Clinicians must clearly communicate what a test can do and what it cannot tell us. So we'll take the example of the common prenatal screening test, which is NIPT. So non-invasive prenatal testing is a genetic test that has revolutionized prenatal care by offering a safer and more accurate way to screen for chromosomal abnormality in a developing fetus. In NIPT, we just use maternal blood, and so in the idea is that fetal DNA circulates freely in maternal blood, and by taking maternal blood, we just extract that fetal DNA and then analyze the DNA to determine the risk of chromosomal abnormality in the fetus. The most common chromosomal abnormalities screened by NIPT include trisomy 21, trisomy 18, trisomy 13, and also sex chromosomal abnormalities like Turner syndrome and Klinefelter syndrome. There are different versions of NIPT, so you should always understand that which version is the version which is recommended by different guidelines. So the basic version of NIPT has these 5 chromosomes, which is 21, 18, 13, and X and Y. Whereas there is another version where it offers these 5 chromosomes along with some microdeletions. And there is a third version where NIPT is offered as an advanced version, and it screen all the chromosomes from 1 to 22 and sex chromosomes. But you should know that professional guidelines do not recommend the use of, they have recommended the use of basic version because the sensitivity and specificity of the trisomies found in this test is more higher as compared to the other tests. So it's very important when you counsel the patients, you should make them understand the benefit and limitation of the technology. Though we can say that NIPT is non-invasive and has revolutionized prenatal screening and reduced unnecessary invasive testing, it still remains a screening test. So counseling become important when we get an abnormal result after NIPT, because patient will interpret this report as that the baby is completely normal. But you have to make sure to make them understand that as this is a screening test, this cannot be 100% accurate. So coming to prenatal diagnostic techniques, so we primarily have 2 prenatal diagnostic tests: CVS, chorionic villus sampling, and amniocentesis. So we will first cover CVS. CVS is performed earlier between 11 to 13 weeks of gestation. It involves sampling placental tissue and allows early genetic diagnosis, which is very valuable when there is a known familial mutation, a high risk screening result, or an increased NT. The advantage of CVS is early decision making, but it does not assess neural tube defects. But it carries a slight, and also it carries a higher procedure related miscarriage risk as compared to amniocentesis. So when you counsel the patient, you have to discuss all these pointers with the patient so that they are aware of about the test, about the benefit, about the risk, and about the limitation too. Then comes amniocentesis. Amniocentesis typically is done from 15 weeks onward. It samples amniotic fluid and is the most widely used prenatal diagnostic test. It is preferred because it is preferred mostly when there is a positive screening test like NIPT, structural anomalies on ultrasound, or when we need comprehensive testing like karyotype or microarray. And an added advantage of amniocentesis over CVS is that it can assess neural tube defect and the miscarriage risk related to amniocentesis is lower as compared to CVS. So let's take another example. Imagine a couple attending their first trimester scan where an increased nuchal translucency is identified. Naturally, now the couple is anxious and overwhelmed, and their immediate reaction is to avoid further testing out of fear. This is where the right conversation becomes critical. The discussion should focus on exploring the difference between screening result and a confirmed diagnosis, while calmly outlining available options such as NIPT, CVS, or amniocentesis. The goal here is not to direct decision, but to help the couple understand their choices and make informed decision with clarity rather than panic. So let's take another case. So just assume that this is a couple receive a high risk NIPT report for Down syndrome, and they immediately believe that the baby is definitely affected. So they are completely frightened, confused, and emotionally distressed, and they go to the obs-gynae and they want to understand further, but they have a lot of anxiety currently. At this moment, the right conversation is essential. It is important to explain that NIPT is a highly sensitive screening test, but not a definitive diagnosis. It only assesses the risk, but doesn't confirm the diagnosis. So, confirmatory diagnostic testing, such as amniocentesis, is still required before making major decisions. This conversation should combine scientific clarity with emotional support, helping the couple understand both the limitation and value of the test. The goal here is communicating the result responsibly is just as important as performing the test results. Prenatal genomics is now moving far beyond traditional screening tests. Technologies like prenatal exome sequencing, rapid genomic diagnosis can provide deeper answers in fetal anomaly evaluation. But with advanced testing also come complex conversation around incidental finding and variant of uncertain significance. This is why helping family understand not just technology, but the meaning and limitation of the results at the right time is very important. Genetic counseling is often misunderstood as merely obtaining an informed consent before testing. This is a major issue because it is considered that genetic counseling is very easy and anybody can do it, but it's not that simple. In reality, counseling involves helping patient understand risk, uncertainty, and emotional implication of genetic information. So the right person, so person with the right knowledge is very important who can provide all this information. And also it is very important to understand that counseling should not be directive. It should always be non-directive. The goal is not to tell the patient what to do, but to help them make decision aligned with their own values and circumstances. So the idea is we guide the patient with all the information and options, and let the patient decide based on their values and circumstances. Some of the hardest conversation in medicine mostly occurs in reproductive genetics. Often clinician must communicate uncertainty, discuss severe fetal diagnosis, or help families navigate emotionally complex decisions. Patients may remember very little about technical detail you have discussed with them, but they will always remember how the conversation made them feel. So this highlights the importance of empathy, patient listening, and psychologically informed communication. As reproductive genomics advances, ethical complexity grows alongside the technological capability. Questions arise around uh, disclosure of incidental finding, reproductive autonomy, and equitable access to care. These conversations must happen thoughtfully, clearly, and at appropriate stage of reproductive journey. Importantly, reproductive genetics should remain patient-centered and guided by informed communication. It should not be driven by the technology alone. Psychological impact is very important. You should understand that the genetic information we are sharing with the couple or the patient is we deliver that information carefully. So genetic information is never purely scientific. It is deeply personal. Patients often experience anxiety, guilt, or grief while navigating reproductive decision. This emotional burden reinforces that why genetic care must include psychological support and follow-up conversation. So you should make sure the person who is guiding or giving the counseling to the couple should has a psychosocial knowledge also, how to talk to the couple with empathy, how to listen them patiently, and how to deliver the information in the right way, in a calm manner. So this slide highlights the central message of today's presentation, that the right conversation at the right time can significantly improve reproductive decision making. Genetic discussions should begin as early as preconception stage with family history assessment and carrier screening, where couples have a multiple range of reproductive options available. During infertility evaluation and IVF planning, genetics help identify underlying causes, guide treatment decision, and support discussion around pre-implantation genetic testing and inheritance risk. In pregnancy, it is essential to clearly explain the difference between prenatal screening and prenatal diagnostic testing so that patient can understand both the benefit and limitation of tests like NIPT, CVS, and amniocentesis. When an abnormal result comes, counseling must go beyond technical interpretation and include emotional support, prognosis discussion, and shared decision making. Early and proactive conversation can help patients feel more informed, supported, and empowered throughout their reproductive journey. So we can say the earlier the conversation, the broader the reproductive choices. To conclude this presentation, the key message from today's discussion is that genetics should not begin only after a problem is identified. It should ideally start before pregnancy through timely risk assessment and counseling. Genetic counseling remains essential because the value of testing depends on how clearly information is communicated and understood. The timing of the conversation can influence reproductive options and clinical decisions. While technology in reproductive genetics continue to advance rapidly, it must always be supported by effective communication and compassionate guidance. Most importantly, patient-centered care must remain at the heart of every genetic conversation and reproductive decisions. So the take-home message is that the right test can identify risk, but the right conversation at the right time can change the outcome. With this, I would like to say thank you for your attention. I hope this session encourages us to think not only about advances in reproductive genomics, but about how we communicate these advances to patients and families in a meaningful, timely, and compassionate way. I would be happy to take any further questions.
Thank you, Dr. Rajni, for that wonderful presentation.
You're welcome, Fiona.
We don't have any questions in the chat box, but if anyone would like to ask anything, or is it something specific in genetics you're looking for, you can please ask Dr. Rajni. She's here. Okay. We have one question which is incomplete in the chat box. Someone is asking you to explain more about, but I don't know what it is.
Maybe you can unmute yourself and ask it. Rabia, it will be great if you. Yeah.
Rabia wants to know a little more about prenatal
Hello.
testing.
Hello.
Yes.
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 Hey,
Hello,
hello, I'm
how are you?
Rabia, and
Okay. No. Okay, let's have talk.
okay, I think it is an excellent lecture, and I wanted to know more about prenatal exome sequencing because I have limited knowledge about that. Can you please explain more about it?
Yeah, so Rabia, so prenatal exome is mostly offered when we are discussing certain cases where we know that we are not able to identify certain, like for example, while doing a scan, we found that the baby had multiple congenital anomalies. Okay, and we know that particular tests like NIPT or other karyotype cannot be an answer to the couple. So we have to choose the test based on the history and based on the scan knowledge. And prenatal exome can give us a more wider knowledge about what is there in the baby in terms of uh, on the genetic level, on the gene level.
Next question.
Ma'am, how do you perform this test? Can you
Prenatal
explain a
exome is,
little?
yeah, prenatal exome is taken. So basically, you have to take a either amniocentesis or CVS, and you send the sample for prenatal exome. But the right choice is always amniocentesis.
मैं
Sorry,
थप्पड़ खींच के मार दूंगी अगर इधर से दरवाजा खोला किसी ने तो
I will request everyone to mute yourself so that if somebody is asking questions, so we can hear it. Yeah, Rabia, say again.
Yeah.
Hello.
Ma'am,
Hello.
I just wanted to ask, how do we perform the prenatal exome sequencing test, and how do we go about it?
So prenatal exome is basically, Rabia, if you know the whole exome sequencing, it's exactly a whole exome sequencing test. So in general exome sequencing, we take, for example, carrier screening. I hope you are aware of carrier screening, where we take the sample from the couple and we test multiple gene in the couple through that test. The similar way, the fetus, if we want to have more information on the gene level, we want extensive, comprehensive information, we will take the sample either through, like for example, CVS or amniocentesis. As we said, these are the main approaches we use for prenatal diagnosis. And those sample can later on be tested either for prenatal exome sequencing or microarray or multiple advanced testing options. So that's how we take the sample, and then it is just tested using a whole exome sequencing approach.
Okay, ma'am, does it have any limitations that it cannot detect a few things, or maybe it is good for certain diseases?
So it has benefit and limitation both. So limitation is that it will give you a wider information, and as we are talking about fetus, so if you have excessive information, for example, in case you get a result and there you get information about variant of uncertainty, you got some result which says that this variant is variant of uncertain significance, and we don't know that much information about that. So the problem is that the counseling point, that how to counsel the couple in such point. So the counseling has to be very, very careful, because you have to explain to the couple that we don't have information about the that variant currently, but that information may change over the time also. So deciding on those factors, couple has to take decision after you counsel the couple based on those factors.
Ma'am, usually we do the anti-scan at around 11 to 12 weeks, and then they normally scan around 18 to 24 weeks. So
Yeah.
at what point should we be going for this kind of test if we find anything abnormal? And secondly, is it like very disease specific? No, you said it's a wider range. So
Yeah.
does it really test all the genes, or does it leave out some diseases? That's what I wanted to ask.
Yeah, so Rabia, so exome sequencings are always, although we say comprehensive, but they are, you can say, there are multiple labs. So many labs have their own options. Like maybe one lab may have included more than 2000 genes in one test. Another lab is only doing 1000 genes, and another separate lab is only doing around 600 genes. But there are professional guidelines about prenatal exome sequencing, and you have to just follow those guidelines, that what test, and then when any lab comes to you, you can ask that whether they are following that guideline for prenatal exome and go for that particular test.
Okay, ma'am, thank you so much for this detailed explanation.
My pleasure, Rabia.
Good evening, Dr. Rajni. I'm Dr. Archana Sharma from Ghaziabad.
Yeah, hi, Dr. Archana. Good evening.
It was an excellent lecture. Thank you very much for giving such an insights or these things. I want to ask one thing. If PGTA has been done in some of the patients, number one, after which age we should advise PGTA to the patient, if there is any age specifications of the couple also.
Yeah.
And
Any other
and
questions, Dr. Archana? Yeah.
yes, if there is any age specification for conducting an PGTA test, if we are going for the IVF, and second thing, if there are certain mosaic embryos, so whether they should be implanted or not.
Very, very good question. And I think most of the debate happens around mosaic embryos only. So I will take your both questions one by one. First
There's no
question,
documentation. Leave her. She didn't pay anything.
I request everyone to unmute yourself.
And keep it us. No, look, we keep it. They'll call talent.
Participants, please mute yourself. Dr. Rajni is trying to answer a question.
Yeah. So, Dr. Archana, about your first question about guidelines on the age factors, see, as per the literature says and as per the scientific evidence has come, earlier PGTA had multiple indications, including repetitive implantation failure, recurrent miscarriages, and male factors. And coming to the advanced maternal age, we still
I think we lost.
Jayaram
Dr. Rajni just joined back. I think she got disconnected.
Dr. Rajni was disconnected, I think.
Yeah, she just got disconnected. She'll join back. Just a moment.
Okay.
Yeah, she's back.
Okay.
You're on mute, Dr. Rajni.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I got disconnected, Dr. Archana. So, sorry. Coming back to your question, Dr. Archana. So, regarding your age guidelines, so in India, we still have the same guideline of 35 plus that you can discuss PGTA with the patient who are advanced maternal age, and but with a proper counseling that about the test, its purpose, its benefit and limitation, because you have to what I will guide you that when you talk to patient regarding PGTA, you have to make sure that patient understand that PGTA is done from a small biopsy from trophectoderm, which lead to placenta. So in the end, you are getting placental information. Okay, so whatever result you get, it's a placental information, and the accuracy of the test is not 100%. So whatever result you are getting, they will not be 100% accurate, and patient should be aware of that carefully, because most of the time this information is not shared and patient believe that whatever report or result has come, it is 100% accurate and they can believe on that report. And then coming to your mosaic transfer thing, so there are guidelines, Dr. Archana, regarding mosaic transfer also, and there is a big debate now. A lot of article has come on mosaic that if you have a mosaic embryo, whether you should transfer or not. So the idea is that you can transfer, you may transfer, but with proper counseling and looking at different aspects, that what is the chromosome involved in the mosaicism, and whether there are like this is a low mosaic or high mosaic embryo. If generally the recommendation is if you have one or two chromosome aneuploidy and they are low mosaic, you can transfer that. But also the chromosome is a low risk chromosome, like chromosome 21, 13, 18, they are considered as high risk chromosome, and there are other chromosome which are considered high risk.
Like 1922.
Yes. So there are guidelines where you can see there is paper, we can always share that with you, that which say that how you prioritize your transfer option when you have mosaic embryos. And the important point is when you are counseling the couple, you should tell them again that as the technology itself is that we are taking few cells from the trophectoderm. Sometime the mosaicism result you are getting may not be actual result, but sometime it can be a biopsy bias, means some
I think we lost her again.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah. So that's it, Dr. Archana. It mainly depends upon. Oh, she's here. Okay, great.
Yeah, I don't know. There is some function that it is disconnecting me again and again. So yeah, so I was talking to
Hello?
Krishna. So the point is the counseling has to be very important that you are taking few cells, so it cannot be. Sometime the mosaic result you are getting can be a biopsy artifact. Sometime it can be related to a number of cells the embryologist has taken is not appropriate number. Generally, 5 to 10 cells is the appropriate number, which should give you a proper mosaic result. But in case anybody has, for example, if an embryologist took only 2 to 3 cells or 4 cells and you got a mosaic result, it is not an accurate result because as per the guideline, you should have minimum 5 cells in the tube or more to that to give an a mosaic result on the report. So these are
Okay.
some important things which you should consider while you receive mosaic result, and then also counseling the couple that they should be aware of.
Okay. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay. Hello. Hope I can speak now.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I just recently, because I have the IONS gene sequencing machine, I had a couple with azoospermia and we did tests and got some few sperms. Results 5 embryos, 4 males, because we'd use it as well to identify maleness and femaleness. 2 severe mosaicism, 2 severe aneuploidy, and 1 deletion on chromosome 1. Would you transfer any of these 5 chromosomes or embryos?
Say again the results. What I heard.
5. 2
5 total chromosomes. 2
total
5
embryos, total blasts
yes,
analyzed.
and 2 were mosaic.
1. Yes, 2 mosaics, 1 mosaic, 2 severe mosaics, 2 severe aneuploidy, and 1 deletion of chromosome 1. We canceled them and they agreed, and we have transferred one after the other, 2 transfers, negative pregnancy tests.
No, but
Why?
2 mosaics were, which were the chromosome involved in the mosaic, whether it was 1 single chromosome or multiple chromosomal aneuploidies?
Yeah, well, he didn't tell me, just chromosome 1 deletion, chromosome 1. Then 2 were 2 blasts, mosaics, another 2 blasts, severe aneuploidy. But the one mosaic is 35%.
35%.
Yes.
So it's a low mosaic, but low mosaic for only 1 chromosome or multiple chromosome?
Don't know. He didn't say. He just said mosaic on embryo 1, mosaic on embryo 2. That's what we do: embryo 1, embryo 2, embryo 3, embryo 4, embryo 5.
No, but it should give you more information. It will be great if you can share the report and we can maybe on the group and
Yes.
remove the patient information. Just share the
Yes.
part of the result and we can guide you over there. Because I think we are missing out the information that, as you said, it is only saying mosaic. Because I have seen multiple report where they write mosaic for chromosome and they do not give the information about the chromosome, because it's very important to understand whether it's a single chromosome, 2 chromosome, or multiple chromosomes. And so I think yes, you can just share on the group, and
I will share it soon. Now I will share it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes, please. May I ask a question, please?
Yes, sure.
Thank you, Doctor. I think the way you handled the previous question was awesome, beautiful one. I'm a geneticist. I work in Lagos, Nigeria, and I've been exposed to Ion Gene Torrent and several other sequencing platforms. When you talked about PGTA, you mentioned that timing matters. So I'm concerned, what timing were you referring to?
The PGTA timing is basically that you have to do it in the IVF like art. So it's like sometime patient, so you have to pre-test. Counseling is very important, that before offering IVF or starting the IVF cycle, you have to discuss the option with the couple in as a pre-test counseling. So that is the timing. So that's how timelines matter, that at what time you are sharing the information.
Okay, I was thinking you were referring to timing of the diagnosis, the PGTA diagnosis, and I was concerned about what timing were you actually referring to. And I would like to comment with regards to the other person's question. You know, when chromosome 1 is deleted, it causes is a major concern, and then you hardly get implantation with chromosome 1's deletion. So because it's a critical chromosome there, and vital embryos have been, vital genes have been out of the sequence. So I want to ask, do you have experience working with GeneMind?
No.
Sequencer?
No, I have not worked with that. I have mostly worked with Illumina and Thermo Fisher. So I don't know, Fiona, if you have any experience with GeneMind?
Yeah, we do work with the GeneMind platform in our laboratory. We have it.
Okay. So maybe then you can answer. Maybe if you have questions, so Fiona can answer, because I have not worked with GeneMind.
Okay, I did like to talk with her after now or on the group chat. If there's a way to connect, I would love to, because I'm actually trying to explore GeneMind. I've worked with Illumina and Ion Torrent, some Thermo Fisher. So I do. There's something coming up with GeneMind. I do like to explore more prior to the actualization of the sequencer. Thank you very much. I'm so honored to have joined the call today.
Thank you. Our pleasure.
You're welcome.
So
all right, if there are no more questions,
yeah.
Okay, we can close the session for the day if there are no more questions from the audience. All right, thank you so much, Dr. Rajni, for your wonderful insights. We look forward to hearing more from you during our course, and we look forward to all of you joining us for the rest of our demo sessions and our course. So please do get in touch with the Fertility team to register for the courses, and we'll communicate things accordingly. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Rajni.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Fiona. Bye-bye. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye-bye.